What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to talk about artifacts in Keyforge. I've seen the question come up a few times, and the question basically is, do you need artifact removal in order to succeed in Keyforge? In Worlds Collide, we actually got one of the best examples of this we'd actually had so far. It's Hawk. Hawk lets you destroy an artifact, and if you destroy an artifact using Hawk, you get to gain an amber. And you gain an amber just for playing it. It's really good, but a lot of very good decks don't have any artifact control, which then leads to the fairly important question of, well, do you need artifact control? Is that something without which we will fail? Well, I decided to go over to the Facebook group. I asked for a little bit of help identifying the most broken of the artifacts around. And, the short answer is, you don't need artifact control unless your opponent's playing a broken artifact, but I'm here with a bunch of examples of artifacts where, if you don't have artifact control, you are at a significant disadvantage. So how about that Saurian 1 Golden Spiral? You see, the Golden Spiral is an artifact, and it's got an action, exalt a friendly creature, ready and use that creature. It's house cheating. Except it's not just house cheating, because you can use the creature out of house, or you can use a Saurian creature and then exalt them, ready them, and use them. So it either lets you use a creature out of house, or it lets you reuse a Saurian creature on that turn. It's very, very powerful. Now, the downside of the Golden Spiral is you have to exalt the creature. That is to say, you must put an amber on it from the common pool. When that creature gets destroyed, your opponent gets the amber. Well, maybe not. You see, the thing about the Saurian Republic is they have a whole bunch of ways to make it so that they just don't care. So how about Praefectus Ludo? Each other friendly creature gains destroyed. Move each amber on this creature to the common supply, which means you can exalt these creatures to use them out of turn, and yet there's no real downside because even if they get destroyed, your opponent doesn't get the amber. How about Senator Shrix, or Senator Brachus, or the Keyforgian Ideal? They're all very similar. You see, Senator Shrix says you may spend amber on her as if it were in your pool. The Keyforgian Ideal says that this creature gains, you may spend amber on this creature as if it were in your pool. And Senator Brachus allows you to spend amber on any of your creatures as if they were in your pool. Basically saying that these all allow you to spend amber on your creatures, so exalting them becomes a massive bonus. Or we've got Centurion Stenopius, who gains power for every amber on it, if you want to be specific, plus free power for each amber on it. Or indeed, we could take a look at Tribune Pompetus, which says that each of your creatures gains 2 power for each amber on it. Point here is that these cards make exalting fine, and if you can exalt without any downside, that's ridiculous. Golden Spiral lets you use creatures the turn you play them, amongst other things. If you don't have any artifact control, you're going to be hurt by that. Now, one that's been out for a while is Nepenthe. Nepenthe is a strange one. It was best with library access. Essentially, you put it down, you wait, and then you've got an Omni ability, use it regardless of your active house, whereby you sacrifice it and return a card from your discard pile to your hand. You could use this to get an extra use of key charge. Or you could use this to reuse library access before it was errated so that you had to purge it in order to use it. This, I don't think it's as broken as some of the others, but it can give you a rather large advantage. But I do have a little list of ones here that we need to have a quick chat about. They're not always going to be amazing, and that's something we need to point out here. Not all of these artifacts is always amazing. They all have the possibility of being amazing in the right deck. So Screaming Cave has an action, shuffle your hand and discard pile into your deck. Now remember, at the end of your turn, you draw until you've got 6 cards in your hand. Screaming Cave does two things. Firstly, it shuffles your discard pile into your hand, so any card you really want to take advantage of, but it's in your discard pile, you can put it back into your deck, giving you a chance to draw it. Secondly, it lets you completely reset your hand. If you've got a hand that is just full of rubbish that you just don't want, remember, you can discard cards from your active house, but you cannot discard cards from your non-active house. Screaming Cave lets you reuse them. This can be huge. Lets you reset your hand every turn. Lets you potentially reuse cards in your discard pile every turn. And remember, if you can get a lot of creatures and artifacts and upgrades on the field, then you're going to constantly have a very small deck, meaning you'll draw into these really good cards far more easily. This can be a problem. If your opponent's got Hawk, they can just drop it down and get rid of Screaming Cave. But I'm giving you examples in this video of artifacts that could make you lose if you don't have an answer to them. Another if card is Transporter Platform. And the if here is very simple. If you've got a deck of a whole bunch of upgrades, especially with Amber bonus, and Transporter Platform, it gets silly very, very quickly. Transporter Platform is an artifact with an action that returns a friendly creature and each upgrade attached to it to your hand. So if you've got, say, 6 upgrades with Amber bonus, you play them all on one creature. You then use Transporter Platform to put that creature and all 6 of those upgrades back into your hand, and then you immediately play them again for the Amber bonuses. And if your opponent does not knock out that creature immediately, you can do it again next turn, as long as you choose the Grand Star Alliance. But if you're doing that before you've played or used any other cards, you're probably going to use the Grand Star Alliance. Now, a pair of artifacts, now either of these could be good on their own. Together, they are great. Together, we've actually seen them take second place at a Vault Tour, coming very, very close to winning the whole thing. Grump Buggy and IRONOBELISK. Yeah, together these can be very good. You see, Grump Buggy is a Brobnar artifact that says that each player's keys cost 1 more amber for each creature of power 5 or higher that their opponent has. The thing is, if you're playing Brobnar, you're probably going to have a bunch of 5 power creatures, and your opponent probably isn't. That's pretty good. Then you've got IRONOBELISK, which says your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each friendly damaged Brobnar creature. And we saw this right up to the final of a Vault Tour. If you can get both of these artifacts down, and maybe even multiples thereof, you can legitimately have a bunch of powerful Brobnar creatures, a bunch of which are damaged, and your opponent is paying 15, 16, 17, 18 amber just to forge 1 key. If you can get rid of your opponent's artifacts, it's not a problem. If you can't get rid of your opponent's artifacts, you lose, ladies and gentlemen. You literally just lose. It's extremely difficult. While we're talking about making your opponent's keys cost more amber, how about Proclamation 346E? This says that while your opponent does not control creatures from 3 different houses, their keys cost 2 more amber. Now, I have seen Alex Watkins, the head of organised play for Keyforge and FFG in general, over at the Vault Tour in Birmingham, playing a deck with multiples of these, and actually Lash of Broken Dreams just for good measure. Sure, your opponent might be able to get creatures from all 3 houses down, but it's not always going to be easy for them to do so. And when they can't do so, their keys can cost a huge amount. Lash of Broken Dreams, a few people did suggest, I'm not such a fan of this, purely because you've got to use it. And it increases your opponent's keys by 3 amber, but you've got to use it. Proclamation 346E is always just there. And the best thing about this is, your opponent can get creatures from 3 different houses down, but they've missed their chance to forge a key unless they're using something like Key Charge. So they've got to wait till their next turn. All you need to do is take it so one of their houses has no creatures down, and then they've got to go through the whole deal again. Now, one of the ones that was most often shouted out when I popped it over on the Facebook group, when I asked for suggestions, one of the ones that came up most often was Quixxle Stone. Quixxle Stone is an artifact. If a player has more creatures in play than their opponent, they cannot play creatures. In the right deck, this can absolutely cripple your opponent. Because you see, it basically says, well, if you've got one creature down and I've got none, you can't play creatures. You see, some decks really rely on creatures, other decks don't. Now, every deck wants to use creatures to some degree, but some decks use artifacts a lot more. Some decks have a lot more bonus amber on their cards, so they don't need to use creatures so much. If you're against a deck that really relies on creatures, and you can handle it much better than your opponent, just whack a Quixxle Stone down. And if your opponent has no artifact hate, you can play one creature and limit your opponent to 2 for the entire game. Or you can play no creatures and limit your opponent to 1 for the entire game. You can just play those 1 or 2 creatures you really think you need, and your opponent can play exactly 1 more than you. But I'll tell you what, the card that really made me think I needed to do this video, and a bunch of you have probably already guessed it, it's Heart of the Forest. Heart of the Forest is one of the most broken cards in all of Keyforge. But you need it with a key cheating card. Let me explain. So it's an artifact that gives you an amber bonus, and not unlike Quixxle Stone, but for keys, not creatures. Each player cannot forge keys while they have more forged keys than their opponent. So if your opponent has got 1 key forged and you don't, they cannot forge number 2 until you forge number 1. Now the goal here is very simple. Your opponent forges 2 keys, but they're not allowed to forge their 3rd. You have a key cheating card like Key Charge or any other really, and you make sure that you have a turn where you forge your 2nd key and then key cheat your 3rd, and your opponent cannot win. They're not allowed to key cheat. They are not allowed to forge a key while they've got more forged than you. So if you've got, and you need a right deck and you need to play it properly and set it up nicely, but if you've got a key cheating card and a Heart of the Forest, you can make it so that your opponent forges key number 2, and they literally have to wait for you to forge, but you forge 2 keys in a row. And if your opponent has no artifact hate, they literally cannot win the game. None of these artifacts are broken in and of themselves. None of these are inherently broken to the point that getting them in any deck gives you a ridiculous advantage. But I can use the word broken here because all of them in the right deck are very much broken in the literal sense of the word. Heart of the Forest breaks the game because you force your opponent to not be able to forge. You forge twice in a row and win. IRONOBELISK and Grump Buggy break the game by making your opponent have to pay so much to forge a key that they're just not going to be able to do so. Do you need artifact hate to be able to succeed in Keyforge? I'm going to do a more thorough video on this topic in the future, but the short answer is, depends on the deck. Against a deck with few artifacts, who really cares? But against a deck like the ones I've been talking about in this video, yes. You can win a bunch of games without any kind of key cheating, but the fact of the matter is there are some games where not having a key cheating card will literally guarantee your loss. You've been warned. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my broken artifacts and all of that jazz. I'd like to know what you think the best ones are. Are there any on this list with which you've had a lot of experience? Let me know in the comment section. Are there ones that I didn't put on this list that you think I should have done? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Transformers and a whole bunch of others. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel and get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.